is more of our students working with our teachers to take ownership on their own learning and developing their learning plan and sequencing their courses in their preferential choice order on whatever works for their plan. Our goal 2 focuses on our multilanguage learner students. Our goal is for them to increase the number of credits they earn by 1 credit per year. And one of the ways we're doing that this year is through an evening school program. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, right now we have 12 students who are continuously coming, a couple more on the wait list. So they come from 4 to 8 p.m. where they get some direct instruction from our teacher and they work on Edgenuity, and then they do the rest of their work from home. And some of the kids are working on 2 courses at a time instead of 1, so that helps get the additional credit throughout the year. So at some points they will be taking 1 full credit in a 3-week session versus a half credit in a 3-week session. And then our third goal is an SEL goal, to work with our students on time management and organizational techniques. The biggest complaint that we get is on the learning management system. They can see kind of like a ticking clock if they're falling behind. It flashes at them red and it gets really overwhelming. So we're working on teaching our students to think about it in terms of just adding like 1 extra assignment a day and breaking that down instead of trying to play catch up 1 full day at a time. So our teachers are working and coaching students in that manner to accomplish that goal. And these are just some of the activities we are doing. Like I said, for activity 1, our students play an active role with their families and their teacher mentors developing their student learning plans. And we do adjust as needed, but in a typical school year, our students will earn 6 credits. Our students going to West Sound Tech will take a class every 5 weeks instead of taking a class every 3. But if they are behind in credits, they will stay on that 3-week trajectory per course to gain that credit acquisition for an on-time graduation. Then goal 2 is meeting with our teachers. So once a month, our students that come into the building, so our MLL students who come to night school, will be meeting with their teachers to prioritize their goals, kind of reflect on their practices and their study habits and see what they can improve on and develop a plan with their teacher. And then our HomeLink students meet with our teachers once a week to work on the same thing, and that's where they'll be working on their organizational goals and their time management goals with their HomeLink mentor teacher. Any questions?
No, I really like the fact that you are challenging them to continue to add credits rather than 5 and done or 4 and done or whatever. I think that's important to them. And the organizational skills piece, when we were at the student forum today at the high school, that seems to be one thing that they all want, is more coaching on organizational skills. So it's a 2-way street, actually.
Yes.
You can coach, they might not get it. So yeah, anyway, no, good job.
Yeah, very good.
Would you like me to do James Taylor?
Yeah.
Right away? Okay. So our James Taylor goals are very similar to our HomeLink goals. The big difference is our students at James Taylor are in the building 4 days a week and are working with the teacher every day. So right now, the majority of our students are behind, and they're kind of on track for 4 credits a year instead of the 6, and we really want to get them engaged in their learning plans to at least get on the target of 6. So that's having those conversations, having their pacing guides of their learning targets for each day to get to those 6 credits per year. Our goal 2 is creating that accelerated learning plan. And one of the ways we're doing that is with direct instruction from what we're calling the STEAM Portable. So down by the old Boys and Girls Club, we have converted it into a more user-friendly mini classroom. So some students go in there for an art class in addition to what they're taking. And then after the winter break, students will be taking engineering and robotics or engineering and technology with robotics, where they will earn a half an elective credit. They will have the opportunity to take photography, where they will earn a fine arts credit, half a credit. And I have 2 teachers that are developing a plan to co-teach an SEL and neuroscience class.
Oh, wow.
So they will use brain chemistry and some brain dissection to teach how your brain works. So the students taking that course, in addition to their other ones, will earn a half credit of psychology and a half credit of lab science.
Nice.
And that will be all hands-on with our teachers in the portable. And then our priority 3 goals also focusing on our MLL students. And our students that are attending James Taylor have also had the opportunity to choose to switch over to the evening program. And that is run through James Taylor. And like I said, we have about 12, and they're not all ML students, but we have 12 students in that program right now.
What is MLL?
Multi-language learners.
Okay.
So that ties in our criteria for entering that program is it's either a 5th-year senior, students who are working full-time or are parenting themselves or taking care of family members. And then from there, it goes on a case-by-case basis. So on any Tuesday or Thursday, you will see some moms with a baby. And we have a volunteer grandma who comes in and holds and feeds babies and helps out so the
Oh,
kids can
nice.
focus on school.
Do you need more than one of those?
We will take any volunteer. We call them the volunteer grandmas. It could be whoever is cleared with their volunteer check. But we provide that because we don't want the price of a babysitter to be a barrier for education for our students. So their activities are very much the same. All of our students, whether HomeLink or James Taylor, are taking an active role in developing their learning plan and work with the teachers. And same thing, if they need to be accelerated or have an extension, we work with them to do that and explain what that means. If you're on an extension, you're not getting more work, but now you're on 2 classes at a time instead of 1. For the goal to close that gap, that's what we're doing with our student portable and adding those classes. And those will run for 3 to 6 weeks, depending on which class they choose to do. And they could choose to do all 3. And then our priority 3 goal is just really getting our students who are disengaged in school, or even those that have chose to leave school, to come back and participate in that evening program to earn their diploma.
How many students do you have in HomeLink?
Right now, we are at 106 or 108.
Oh, wow.
And we got a
Wow.
couple that are transferring in at the trimester.
Okay, and James Taylor?
If you count the evening program, 66.
Wow, that's a lot.
And there's a wait list.
What would be the profile of a, say, an average HomeLink student?
It really depends on the student. We have some students that want to accelerate and finish high school in 3 years and have a very supportive environment at home. We have some students that don't have support at home and are McKinney-Vento and living elsewhere in unstable environments that are doing their best to get by. We have students with high anxiety who just coming into the building is too much for them, so they prefer to learn at home, and it's a better atmosphere and they can have productive learning there versus a comprehensive school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So let's see who's next here.
Hawkins.
Evening. I wanted to start off by just kind of showing our overarching vision and mission for Hawkins Middle School, which is to provide a school that is for all students to feel safe, valued, nurtured, allowing them to find personal and academic success in an inclusive school community that challenges them to grow into a productive, positive citizen. And doing that with a focus around the social emotional, the learning environment, the curriculum instruction, and the way we assess our students over time. That's what drives our overall goals that we've created. So our first goal, looking at our data over the last several years, we can see that math has been a big struggle for the middle school. And so our number one goal for the past couple of years has been to see an increase in our math scores and abilities among our students. So we want to see that 80% of our students are not just meeting yearly growth, but trying to get more than yearly growth, accelerate them in their math, and using our FastBridge assessments from the fall to the spring to show that growth. To start with, math teachers are establishing student growth goals among their classes and among their groups. They're pre-assessing their students related to where the skills are at that moment, and then using and collaborating with each other in order to develop interventions on a regular basis for their students. They have 4 to 6 weeks intervals in which they move their kids into intervention systems to give them beyond just the classroom level instruction in math. And the second piece of that is these WIN classes, as they're called, what I need for growth. They are rostered in that 4 to 6 week basis on how they're doing in their current standards in the current classroom in math. The math team, like I said, collaborates daily in order to support where they're at. They look at the exit tickets of their classes to see what they need to do the next day in their WIN classes to help support them to be in the next class. And again, we're using the assessment FastBridge in order to make our final determinations of being able to see that growth over time. Our second goal is related to our reading goals, and specifically our reading goals with our students of need, the IEP, our students with IEPs and our students in our EL programs. We want to see that 80% of those students in those two programs are making not just, again, yearly growth on their own goals and where they're at, but more than a year's growth because they're behind. And we have two different strategies in which we're working on this. Number one, all students with an IEP and that are in the EL program are intentionally scheduled into their language arts classrooms for support. This could be in a co-taught class where there's 2 teachers in the classroom that are teaching the general education needs and the special education needs or the EL needs of the students in there. It could be where a student needs some more specific sheltered instruction, whether that's in a resource setting or whether in an EL classroom that is focusing a lot more on the acquisition. That would be more of our students that are newcomer status. And then we also are working to support all of our teachers in being able to collaborate and teach together the challenging students they have in the class, and not just the students that are in the, that have IEPs and ELs, but also their students that are high achieving that are in their classes as well. That differentiation need of instruction using UDL, GLAD strategies, and effectively using their collaboration time that they have on a regular basis. And then our third goal is directly related to seeing our students succeed as students themselves. So that goal is that all students are going to improve their academic organization and preparedness for learning in class as measured through monthly AVID organizational rubrics. AVID is a focus that we're getting back into again after COVID in our school. And so our emphasis really was to attack the student organization preparation for class. Too often students would come to a class without any materials, and that's just they're not ready to learn. So we made very strong expectations of students of what they needed to have as students in a classroom, and ways in order to support them to have that in the class. The first couple weeks of school, anytime there was a student that showed up in a classroom that didn't have materials, they were brought down into the office and we called home immediately to parents and said, hey, we need materials here. Can you bring them in, or do we need to supply them here for them? And then make sure they got back to class with materials to do the work. The next day, if that student showed up without materials again, we're back in the office calling home saying we need materials again. We know we gave them yesterday. You know, what do we need to do to help support? And do this on a regular basis. That 2-week emphasis on making sure kids had their materials in class has shown that over 95% of our kids on a daily basis have what they need in class, are ready for work, and are learning. The part of organization, making sure they not only have the materials but also have it organized and are able to use it and to study with it. Using the AVID strategies around organization, we've been doing weekly organizational binder checks, and are using that data to show growth and improvement of the student organization skills over time. All of that leading to higher levels of learning in the classroom.
I do have a question. You're using FastBridge and you test in the fall where they're at, and then again in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything in the,
We do it in the winter too in January.
okay,
So it's kind of to see where we are and see if we need to make any adjustments.
Okay.
But more importantly, we don't just use the FastBridge to determine the intervention supports of our kids and what they need. We're really using the classroom-based assessments to see where they are at that moment and try to make moves in a shorter-term basis of what the kids need.
I
The
see.
the teachers are continually collaborating on who's going where and making that decision as a grade level team and a math team based on where they're at.
Okay, thank you. What is the progress monitoring tool that you describe here under resources?
The current one that they're using are classroom-based assessments that are changing with the standards as they go. We're looking into using other programs that are connected to the curriculum in order to have more regular weekly check-ins and seeing how that works, but we're still testing on that.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned something about, in the math instruction, about some kind of assessment at the end of the class so that,
So
can you tell me about that so they're ready to go on the next?
classes often start with what they call an entry task or an exit ticket. And the entry task is mainly to see, are the kids ready kind of to jump into that day's lesson. The exit task is to see, did they kind of get what they needed to in that lesson? And so as they're collecting the exit tasks as they're leaving, and it's a really quick, short couple minute question that just to see where the kids are at. If they're showing that they maybe didn't quite get what they needed in that one, then determining, do we need to reteach this the next day? Or are we seeing that these students that are in our wins, maybe if we hit them with this little piece here, we'll be able to come into the next day with what they needed and catch up with everybody else.
So there's more than one teacher there that's having this discussion, or what?
It can't, sometimes. Some of our classes do have co-teachers in them if they have a lot of the students with IEPs or if they have a heavy EL presence in the classroom.
Okay, or otherwise, if it's an individual teacher, here I've got this data from the class I just taught. I see what I need to do tomorrow is.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
daily versus when you take an assessment at the end of the unit. Now you're just getting that data for the end of the unit. We're getting it daily.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think that's heroic, what you're doing. I think that's a great idea. And I just think that's heroic, what you're doing with the people that don't come prepared, to class. I think that ought to work. I can't believe that we wouldn't have some high scores, at the end of the year out of all this effort.
High student engagement is needed to get there, so.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay, North Mason High School. I love the jacket.
we've got a lot of comments. Good evening, thanks for having us here. Chad Collins, Steve Haggett. North Mason High School, we got two goals we're focusing on this year, and you've heard a little bit about our first goal. We're continuing to push AVID building wide. And we talked about it last year. AVID is a college and career readiness program that teaches students how to become better students, better learners. A big piece of it is teaching them organizational skills. This is the second year. Last year, we bought binders for every student in our school. And this year, we bought binders for all incoming freshmen. And in August, when we have our staff, we taught them, our AVID trained teachers taught all our staff what an AVID binder should look like. So we spent about an hour teaching our teachers what a binder should look like. Then the first week of school, they taught their homeroom kids, this is what your binder should look like. And we're going to check your binder weekly. So we're continuing that.
Awesome.
Our goal is to have, we're about 50% AVID trained building wide, our certificated staff, and this year we would like to get to 65% trained by the end of this school year. We'll send a crew to our summer training. Our Steve's going to talk a little bit about our activities that support our goals. Our second goal is, as you know, the last couple years in the pandemic really impacted students, and we have a number of kids that are very credit deficient. So we are ramping up and building our credit recovery program currently. We have a number, we're focusing on our 10th through 12th graders that are credit deficient because we want to get them across the finish line. So we're doing everything we can. We have credit recovery built into our master schedule this year. A number of kids are in a credit recovery class. And Steve will talk a little bit more about some of that data.
Yeah, for the credit recovery, oh, it's up there right there, but so this is the first time we've been able to build some credit recovery classes into our master schedule. So there's certain criteria for kids that just need that extra boost. They fell behind, whether at the pandemic, whether it was last year. So we have them in a credit recovery class where they can make up any credit that they've missed in the past. So far we have 25 kids that have made up a credit that they didn't have before. So that's impressive so far, and obviously we still have some time. We're going to see some come down the line right at the end, and we have that built in every trimester of the year. So that'll be nice. We also added applied geometry this year. Again, we know math numbers aren't what we want them to be, and math is a struggle for some kids. They got to work a little harder. So we've added applied geometry, and it's been great. The kids have really taken to it well. Our teacher's done a great job with it, and you'll see, you might have seen today when you guys were in the halls, like all those sticky notes on the wall. That was an applied geometry project where they're out there working on it. It's more of the hands-on rather than the traditional geometry class. And we're hoping to add an applied algebra class with that. And so if that fits well into your pathway for what you're going into, let's get a class that fits you, and let's really run with it. So it's been really good. It's been really, really beneficial for our kids. And then we're also looking at adding some project-based learning where it's not just, the days have to go away where pass this test or you can't pass this class. That's not what it is anymore. So how can you show me that you learned standard, you hit that goal without just doing a traditional test? You need to build something. Do we need to have a discussion? There's so many different ways, and our teachers are really excited to learn more about this. And they want to find ways, because especially with kids that are multi-language learners, IEPs, how can we go into this and find other ways to help you rather than sit down and answer this test? So that's, with credit recovery, I think it's really going in a great direction. We have a graduation specialist that is checking kids' grades daily, and she's a bird dog. She will check D's and F's every week. She's pulling reports. And then if they've missed a class, she'll go to their second period class. Hey, why weren't you in first period? Here's what you missed. You need to have this ready tomorrow. And so they're not sliding through the cracks. She's doing a great job, and she's also in the credit recovery classes. So she's helping kids. You'll hear her walk by. Hey, get in there and get set up. We're working on your resume today. And so she's doing a great job. It's nice to have an extra set of eyes just always on that group of students that we need some help with. Yeah?
Could you say a word about applied algebra? How is it different than regular algebra?
Well, I haven't seen it yet. So
We have geometry right now. We're hoping to have applied algebra next year. It's more hands-on.
It'll be more project-based. We do know that.
It's through the CTE department. It's a career and technical education class. Lexi's been played a big piece in bringing that to our school. And it's for kids that struggle in the regular geometry class. It's doing geometry differently. And
Banked physics for algebra. F equals MA is a basic algebra standard. So when you're doing labs like that, when you're watching a marble go down a coast or whatever that is, you're seeing how that equation works in real time. And you're doing some labs and gathering that data so you can see the trends and see how that standard works and how they connect to real life application, which helps with student buy-in. And then for like applied geometry, last week our teacher was teaching special triangles. They were building the different shapes with straws. So not only are they working on that geometry standard where they're measuring and figuring out what those different shapes look like and they can see it in 3D form, they're also learning measuring tools, measuring skills, because that's a real problem in the workforce. Kids don't know how to read a measuring stick anymore. They struggle with that. And then they're able to apply it. Oh, this triangle is the strongest. This is why we use a perfect triangle for the roof of a house. So they're able to apply the standards to real life application.
So similar, a math class with a science lab built into it.
Wow, I'm beginning to get religion in this meeting. It just seems that we've got a whole lot of stuff that the community ought to know about. I'm getting excited.
Good.
I hope I can restrain myself for the rest of the
I think you're doing a good job, John.
Well, I'm really pleased with the project-based learning that you're doing.
Yes.
And just the way that you can decide whether or not a student gets it at the end through a project. I
Yeah.
think that's wonderful.
We have to
So,
go that way.
Good job,
And the great
guys.
thing is just the buy-in from the teachers. They're really excited to learn more. They want to know more about that option. It's not, stuck in the past. We know we have to go with this. So it's been great.
And there's a training in this spring that Kyle Ellis, our Director of Inclusive Ed, wants to take a group of teachers down. So
Oh, great.
I believe it's in San Diego, so we're gearing up for that.
Oh, awesome. Well, good job.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, Belfair Elementary.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, I want to introduce my partner in Prime. She's awesome. This is Christine Mart, and this is my assistant principal. And I don't know if you met everybody, but I want to make sure everybody knew who she was. Yeah. And we are super pleased to be here. I'm going to talk because she doesn't have a voice, so I'm going to, do my thing. We're super excited to be here. Thank you for having us. We have 3 main goals that we're focusing on at Belfair Elementary, and I'm going to start with our reading goal. I'll go through the goals, and then I'll go through our what we call commitments at Belfair Elementary, our action steps, our activities. Our first goal is a reading goal, and it's in partnership between parents, community, and staff, and we want to reduce the amount of students that were identified as we want to increase, the amount of students that were identified as at or above reading level from 50%, 7% last June to 70% this coming June. And on our report card, on an elementary report card, there are 3 little boxes, and you have to check one of those boxes at, above, or below reading level. And so we decided that that is a really good thing to track. How many of our kids are we able to check that box that they're at or above? So this will be our second year tracking that, so we're going to continue to do that. It's we showed some growth last year, and we're hoping to show a lot more this year. Our second is a math goal, and in partnership between parents, community, and staff, 80% of Belfair Elementary students will meet or exceed their projected growth in math according to our FastBridge screener. So we take a screener 3 times a year, and that screener told us that we need to improve. We have a big feat ahead of us, but we are going to work hard on our commitments to meet that goal. Hopefully they've all met that, and so the screener tells us that if a student is at this level, that their projected growth should be here by the end of the year. So our goal is that they all meet that projected growth. Our last one is attendance. We thought that attendance was super important. Our attendance was dismal last year. We were at 55%. If they are not in school, they cannot learn. So we are really focusing on that. It's actually, I think, our attendance goal has brought us together as a school. We post it daily, visible to everybody to see. We post it on our Facebook page. We are really trying to engage our families in attending, making sure that if they're sick, they stay home, but otherwise they need to be in school because we have a lot for them to learn, and we're super excited to have them here this year. So some of those commitments around our reading goal, we are focusing on win time. I know that the middle school mentioned win time. Win time is what I need. So each individual student has a need in reading, whether they need to be accelerated, whether they need to have some foundational skills filled. This is a time, 40 minutes a day, that they focus on that. In order to focus on that, the first thing we have to do, though, with our data is look to see if 80% of our students are learning and reaching that standard. And if 80% are not, then it becomes a tier 1 level concern, and so we need to really look at our data and make sure our kids missing phonemic awareness at, are 80% hitting that. If they're not, then phonemic awareness needs to go into tier 1 instruction, core instruction every single day. So I think that that's been our biggest growth, is really looking at that and how do we adjust what we've always done to make sure it's what our kids actually need. So that's been fantastic this year. In order to do that, we need to collaborate really, really well in our PLCs and dig into data. So we've created a WIN cycle. We look at our data every 6 weeks. We do what's called a data dive. We've also put together, grade banded our data dives. For example, we have K1 meeting together. So if we have students that are in kindergarten that need extension, during that 40-minute period, they can go into a first grade classroom and receive what they need. Same goes the other direction. If we have a first grader that is missing out on some super basic foundational skills that may be more at a kindergarten level, they can walk to that classroom and get what they need. So we've been really excited about that too. So that, for example, that puts together, if we have 4 kindergarten classrooms and 4 first grade classrooms, plus what we call our learning specialists, our AP teams, our ML teams, our academic paras, we can push in and flood 2 grade levels with up to 15 adults. So it's been fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good.
Our next commitment is our math commitment. And this is where I truly feel we need to grow the most. I think that we have some goals for next year to bring that win time into math. But this year we're really focusing on teaching Eureka with fidelity, making sure we're hitting all the pieces, that when we walk into a classroom, all those commitments are being seen, and that we are really integrating our WIDA standards, our ML standards, into that time. So we're focusing on the core this year. Next year, we're going to move into focusing on what does win look like for math, and how do we create that intentional time during our day where they're doing that walk-to model. So we're working on that. There are a couple of grade levels that have decided this year to pilot that, so I'm super excited. That's kind of been a grassroots thing. It's exciting. And our last, our commitments are around attendance. Spoke a little bit about what we're currently doing, but we're really making sure that we are using, we have a grant this year. We have a para that is just dedicated to attendance. She's working through processes working with families that are struggling on attendance, going through, having meetings, checking in, what are the barriers. We're buying alarm clocks like crazy because families just can't get out of bed. I know. So between alarm clocks, phone calls, creating systems at school where, you come to school, yay, you're at school. We do some things to make sure that they want to come. So it's been really focusing on, we're all in this, we all need you to be here, and putting out there. We also started our pre-COVID, we did monthly assemblies. We're bringing those back. In our assemblies, we are awarding attendance. So we have monthly attendance awards for grade levels, and it's been fantastic. I think, like I said, I think it's kind of building our culture and getting everybody on board this goal. Any questions?
I was going to ask you about the core curriculum Eureka that you're using. Is that something that we just adopted and I forgot it?
No, this is, I think, year 7. It could be, I believe is it year 7? Boom, nailed it. Okay, yeah, so no, it isn't. But I would have to say, it's not new, but we have, at Belfair Elementary, I think we are at 8 new teachers. So we really want to refocus on what it looks like to deliver that instruction in the classroom, and also get teachers focusing on what is the standard and using the curriculum to guide us to that, through that standard. It's not necessarily, the curriculum's not the standard. So what do their kids need? What pieces of Eureka do we need to make sure they're doing? What are the must-dos? And doing it with fidelity.
All right, thank you.
Any other
Okay,
questions?
thank you very much.
Okay.
And I hope your voice comes back. Sand Hill.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
I'm going to introduce you to Rosanna Lampano. She is our new assistant principal, doing an amazing job jumping right into the culture of Sand Hill. And she's going to chime in if she feels like she needs to correct me on anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
So at Sandhill, we have 3 goals that we're focusing on. Our number 1 goal is that in partnership with Building Instructional Leaders and Families, 80% of our students, including those needing MLL support and IEP support, identified as below grade level, will show gap closing growth, which means 1 year plus. We're kind of going at 1.2. We want to see that additional bump in growth to kind of close that gap. And 80% of our grade level or above students will meet or exceed their projected growth in reading and math according to our FastBridge platform. And then we added this year and 2 other identified points of data decided upon by each grade level. So what we're attempting to do this year is kind of triangulate our data. Along with FastBridge, we want to also see how students are progressing and doing in 2 other points that are more relevant, not more relevant, but according to their grade level. And then we can come up with a specific number that we can show growth from multiple data points. And again, we're looking for that aggressive growth in math and reading. So some of the things we're doing with that, and I'll talk about the attendance secretary, which Jessica talked about. We're still attempting to acquire an employee for that position. It's been rough with not finding enough people to put in some positions. So we're working on that still, but we do have our walk to read, our win time, what I need, just like what Jessica was saying. Ours is a 45-minute block where we look at that data every 6 weeks. Our grade levels look at that data and make decisions on what their individual students need, what skill is identified for those groups, and then we target that skill in those classrooms. And then we haven't got to this quite yet, but we know the power in students identifying their own goals and being a part of setting and tracking their own progress towards their goals. A lot of that work is we're also piloting a Hope Navigators work, which involves letting students know that I am in control of my future and I can change my future, and I am an integral part of making that happen. So identifying goals for students and then having them track that along the way. Increased family involvement is always on the forefront of what we're trying to do, bring families into school, let them understand what we're trying to do. We've had multiple events already so far this year. And then again, sticking to the commitments in our MTSS blueprint and plan along the way. So that's goal 1, that's our big one. Goal 2 is in partnership with staff and families, 80% of Sandhill students will earn a satisfactory or above on all academic characteristics of a successful learner, according to the report card, and identified as no risk in academic behaviors on our SABRS screener. And so the characteristics of a successful learner is language that we identified, what we would like to see to help our students become more independent in their learning. And so we track that on the report card every year, and we'll be able to pull that. Report cards haven't been out yet. Next December 2nd they're due. So once we get that data, we'll be able to then track to see how our kids are progressing according to those characteristics. And then of course our SABRS data, where we monitor our students' social and emotional status and where they're at and how we intervene with that data. In addition, to make that happen, we have PBIS instruction in all areas. That's clear understanding of what expected behaviors are in every place in the building. We also link that to our Character Strong curriculum that we've adopted by identifying a certain word per month and then celebrating kids once a month on meeting that characteristical trait. And of course, in an increased family involvement for this, we had a fall into learning event. We had a meet with the principals event, and we're having our MLL family night next week, or this Thursday night. Yeah. And goal 3, in partnership with staff and students, and just like Jessica said, the importance of attendance. In order for our kids to be committed to this and for us to attain these goals, they need to be present in our building. So we're asking that 80% of our Sandhill students will attend 95% of school, and that's 1 day a month we're asking for 80% of our kids to do. We track that on a board. Our building's set up easier. Every time they go to lunch, they see the numbers, and I see them making comments about it and encouraging each other to increase that number, that daily attendance that we report on there. So the importance of being here and not losing those steps when they're absent. Any questions?
So what has your attendance percentage been?
I don't have the exact number, but we've always been in the 90s.
Have you?
Yeah,
Nice.
except for this week. I mean, stuff's going around. I think our third grade was at 79% today. So there's some sick illnesses going around.
Yeah.
But we've been consistently in the low 90s.
Nice.
What's been really helpful too is we have asked our staff members to follow up with their families and kind of in a relationship building conversation with them about why have they been missing 2 or more consecutive days. And so we've been getting some really nice feedback from that. We're hearing, of course, some of those illnesses coming through, but when it's something other than an illness, we have an opportunity to kind of follow up and connect with that family and reiterate the importance of being available and in the building.
Nice. Well, good job.
Very
Any
good.
questions?
If you had one wish for some kind of resource that you don't now have, what would it be?
That's a tough one. So many things. A bigger school.
Building, you mean? Building, you mean?
Yeah. We have 550 kids this year at Sand Hill.
Wow.
So,
You really need a bigger
547.
building.
Yeah.
It feels like we're busting at the seams.
That was kind of a selfish ask, but
That's okay.
I think that would make a lot of difference.
What I want to say to you folks and to everybody, I read a lot of stuff, a lot of it political. I feel that I've come into the rebuttal of a big case against the schools that I've been hearing everywhere on the news. I started my career as a debate coach, the William Pitt Debating Union, University of Pittsburgh. And so I coached debate. I feel like I've heard the indictment of the present system. And I come into this meeting and bam, 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 wow! What point didn't they cover? And I just am very impressed with the first affirmative.
Thank you.
It is impressive. You
That's
also
very-
have characteristics of an independent learner attached here. Do you want to talk
Yeah,
about
did
that?
I share that with you guys? I think I did, yeah.
Yes, yeah, we have it.
So we worked on this 2 years ago. We started this, but we were when we looked at our report cards and how we were communicating with families on how our kids were in the classroom. We wanted to paint a bigger picture, and then what we were really seeing when we dove into talking about our kids is it was the struggles that they had to work independently, and so putting some of these together and then assessing them and then using this language on a monthly basis. We're going to focus on this piece of being a successful learner this month and celebrate that. So, and some of them consist of students interested in academic topics. Student models strong organizational skills and is prepared for instruction. Student produces acceptable work. Student works independently. Student is able to focus on learning. Student engages in academics. So it's just another way for us to try to produce those independent learners at this level. And then a way for us to better communicate with families on the report card about what we're seeing in the classroom for their kids.
Do the students ever fill this out about themselves?
Yes, that's part of our Hope
Awesome.
Navigator work, actually. A couple
Awesome.
piloted classes, our students are assessing themselves on these. We've changed them into more kid-friendly language for the younger grades so that they can better assess. Mhm.
And what's the responses on those?
We're just in the beginning stages.
Okay.
We've had a few areas, but so we focus on one of these characteristics a month, and then every month we celebrate a student who has
Okay.
resembled that throughout that month. And so teachers, it's a common language across the building around what characteristic we're focusing on, and eventually we'll hit all of them throughout the year. So grades will come out on December 2nd, and we'll be able to see how teachers are assessing their kids around being independent learners. And in the winter, we'll see where we're at and how much growth we've seen.
Okay.
And then again in the spring.
That's awesome.
Let me just reinforce some of the good work that they did on this. They also looked at these and they compared them to our SABRS, which is our social emotional screener, and took the academic standards of the SABRS screener and mirrored it here so that we're getting the same information from several data points. So it was very thoughtful work on the part of the elementary.
Well, good
principals.
job.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Got it? Oh, okay, so thank you all for your hard work. I know how difficult it is to, every time I go into the high school, I'm not at the other schools very often, but I see those two guys, the blue jacket guy and the other one, I see them moving around in the commons. It's just like this maze of kids out there. It's good job. That's all I have to say. Keep it up. And the board study work session is adjourned.
Okay, so
Oh.
you go.
Instead of using acronyms.
I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome everybody. I'll be leading the meeting today. Director Krotzer has been excused, and at about 7 p.m., our student board member Audrey Johnson will be heading out early. So at this moment in time, I will entertain a motion to approve or amend our meeting agenda.
Madam Chairman, I move that we accept the agenda as given.
Okay, do I hear any discussion? Okay, let's call for a vote. Everyone say aye if you approve the agenda.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Do we have any public comments, Jackie? None? All right. Student board member comments.
Okay, I'll go first. So, one thing to mention, we had the job fair for the seniors a couple weeks ago. I wasn't able to attend, but I heard from my friend who did attend that it was pretty cool. He got to talk to a couple different colleges, and that helped him out, he said, just kind of getting different ideas. Also, as far as college applications go, like most of the early access and stuff has been due right now, or the cutoff is like November 4th. I know UW's is today. So as far as that goes, I think that the senior bulletin has done a good job on like updates for scholarships and stuff. So kudos to that. What else? Also, the fall leadership conference for DECA was from the 6th through the 8th, and that was good. That went really well. Students got to do mock interviews. Everybody in our chapter, our DECA chapter, did a mock interview, so that was really cool to set them up for jobs and stuff. And last thing that I have to say is that there is a TOLO for North Mason on January 28th, and it's black and white themed. So that's the next upcoming thing we have for that, and then I'll pass it to Morgan.
Thank you, Audrey. So, we had a roundtable meeting today with Ms. Reichstein's room with a lot of freshmen. We had a lot more this time. Almost everyone who was invited came, thankfully, as opposed to last month where we had about 8 kids show up. This time we had about 20, which was nice. They weren't super talkative because it was heavily freshmen. We're trying to work on getting that balanced out so we get a good mix of all grades, get a good cross-section. But that'll just come with time and finding kids who are available. And then we had some clubs recently established, most notably Cornhole Club. They are thankful that that got approved. I've never seen any group of kids more excited for anything in my life.
Well, it's fun.
So they really enjoy it. That's been a big hit at the school, and all the kids are enjoying it. So, and then there was one last thing. But yeah, those are the main things. So that's all I have.
How large is the cornhole club? Like how many people?
Oh gosh, I've seen it. I walked into the school I was gonna teach some ASB kids how to make posters, and I walked into the hallway, and it was just filled. with
Really?
kids. Yeah.
I love cornhole, but that's really
There's probably about 40 kids signed up.
wow.
It's a good size class, so
Yeah.
it's fun.
That's awesome.
So,
What is it?
cornhole, it has 3 holes in a slanted board, and you throw beanbags.
It's just one hole
from-
each.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about, I wanted to ask, where was the job fair? Was that here?
I
Or
don't
where
think
was it
so.
hosted?
That was at the convention center in Seattle, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it was a whole field trip.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know how many kids went, but I did sign up for it. I wasn't able to go. But the sheet list in Mosby's room, like the whole front sheet, and I think there was 2 pages, you were writing on the back of it.
Oh,
so we could
wow.
sign up for it. And I think it was juniors and seniors.
That's really
Nice.
cool.
And
So
we have another event coming up that the chamber is sponsoring here on campus.
yeah, like the one last year or the,
But they're dividing that into 2 separate events.
okay.
One for the mini, interviews, and one for the managing my life. Here's your job, here's how much money you make, here's the problems you have to deal with, and then the kids going through that and getting help from the adults there. So I think that will be really cool again.
That is cool.
Sorry, one last thing. Last meeting I mentioned that the DECA chapter was also doing classes for financial literacy. So we just finished those last week, and we were able to wrap up the whole kind of unit that we planned. So we did budgeting, saving and investing, and scholarship money or financial aid. Those were the 3 sections that we worked on. And then the last thing that we included was like how we wrapped it up was like minorities in like student debt, because the whole thing was to fix, or I guess like combat student debt. So we talked about a little bit about like minorities, like poverty, and then also race and stuff, and how that affects that area. So we were able to wrap it up pretty good.
So Audrey, is that something that's offered through the DECA club, or is it a class?
So we worked with who is student store kids, and that class is primarily junior and senior. Through DECA, it wasn't something that we have like a curriculum for, like the students. The reason we did the classes was for a financial literacy paper, which is an event that is like you write a 20-page paper on something. We did financial literacy, and then did a subcategory in student debt, which is what we focused on. So that was more of a student-led thing. There's 3 kids in charge, me, and then the 2 other officers, Talia and Hunter. So that was student-led, so it's not technically something ran by the DECA program. It was more run by the students, but we were able to offer it to who was, or the DECA Advisors Student Store class as like people that we
I
would
see.
teach. Yeah.
There is a financial math class.
Yeah. I have not taken that, but yeah.
There exists.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
And then what about Tolo? Is Tolo here typically, or is that offsite?
Yeah, so Morgan mentioned he's a little bit more in touch with the program, or like that ASB. But it is at the Aux Gym in the Aux Gym. I know a complaint for like homecoming, we were able to kind of fix what we learned from homecoming. A complaint was that the lights were on. So the Aux Gym, we're able to not run into the problem where it'll run into the breakers, you said, which was a security light. So that's why we had to have the lights on. So it should be more enjoyable for students. But
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, during homecoming, we had to turn breakers off to get the security lights to turn off. But in the auxiliary gym, we'll have more control over the lights, and we can dim them too, unlike the commons where it's pretty much on or off.
I see.
And then the one last thing that I remembered that I was going to mention is we're working on the 45 minutes program. That's a big thing right now.
Yeah.
So we got pretty much we got a list of kids together. I'm going to conduct, I think, 2 or 3 more interviews tomorrow with parents and students. And then, but other than that, we're going to be staying at Alderbrook. We got the rooms lined up. We're working with the fire department. So we got everything that we can do now ready to go. So that's going to be, there'll be more information to come. We're going to send out a press release beforehand. We're going to send one out a couple months beforehand, then irregular intervals leading up. So when
Very
there are
cool.
a lot of cop cars, helicopters at the high school, no one is freaking out. But that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you, Morgan. Thank you, Audrey. At this point in time, we will move on to the consent agenda. These are items that have been delegated to the superintendent, but by law must be approved by the board. So we vote on it as one block with one vote. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, or do we need to pull off any items?
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, are there any items for discussion that anyone wants to bring up? I have not had a chance to read this Mine Club edition, Minecraft.
Is this at the middle school?
No, this is at the elementary school.
Oh.
The teacher is doing a research project, action research, to see how that it impacts student learning to be able to be playing Minecraft with their fellow students in our school in an after-school program. So
I see. Does Christina Shook, is she TK normally, or no, she teaches what grade?
yeah, she is TK, but she'll be doing this
This
with the
for elementary.
upper elementary kids. Yeah.
So what grades would be eligible to join? Does it say that on here?
I just got this today
Oh.
because they were all excited. And it's for her master's degree, so she's going to take, like, I believe 3rd through 5th grade students.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
I had one question, but I don't think it was anything. I think it was in the surplus report, and I just want to look at that to make sure. Yes, so the first item in the surplus, we had a bus get totaled.
Yeah, the bus was so old that its total value was less than $15,000.
Okay.
And that's the amount, that we were able to receive.
Okay.
So that makes it totaled.
I see. So it wasn't in an accident or something?
It wasn't an accident.
Oh, it was?
But it was really a fender bender. But
Okay.
because the bus was
I
so
see.
old, its value was so low.
We have to get rid of, yeah, we have to total it. I see. Okay, anyone else have any discussion or questions?
No.
That was the one.
Okay. Yeah, you see totaled and just kind of jumps out at you. So, all right, I guess we will take a vote. All in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, say aye. Aye. Okay, motion passes. So we are at the superintendent update and the budget status update.
Yes, and you will note you did receive some additional information
Yes,
that will
via
be
email.
added to this report. So
I'm going to open that
Dan
now.
and his team have been working really hard to meet the deadlines from OSPI. This is all new, and so they were able to meet the deadlines today and get everything completed. So go ahead, Dan, and
Thank you, Dana. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
We're going to begin with the monthly budget status report, which takes us through October 31st. And we're going to begin with the other funds. So the fund balances for other funds include the capital projects fund. The fund balance at the end of October was $403,033. That's an increase of $802. really that's investment income is what that is. The debt service fund has a fund balance at the end of October of $2,484,000, excuse me, and $427, and that's an increase of $158,545. Now, I just wanted to make you aware that you're going to see this change next month because we have a balance due on our bond of $2.5 million, and there will be enough. The balance is due on November 30th. There'll be enough by then for us to pay that because we're continually collecting money on that. So I checked with the county treasurer and they said we're okay. But just to know that we're going to see a big difference next month. Okay. Our ASB fund balance at the end of October was $492,008, an increase of $46,376. And the transportation vehicle fund end balance was $506,274, which is an increase of $845. We're going to take a look at the enrollment. Now with the financials, I'm going through October 31st, but our enrollment here does include our November enrollment, which is done at the beginning of November. So we have that information. So I've included it, and I think it's important because it really helps us kind of see where we're headed with our financial picture. And also note that this does include our Running Start enrollment, but also we budgeted for our Running Start enrollment. That was included in our budgeted count. So I didn't want to take that out. We had budgeted for 2,260, and you can see September was below that. You know, it looks noticeable, but we didn't have Running Start students then. And then you can see October, November, slightly above budgeted. Our November enrollment, and this is FTE, not head count, was 2,271.97. And the average October, November, which includes the Running Start, is 2,274.45, which is above what we budgeted by a little bit. And that's, I think, a good place to be. Right there. Our budget wasn't way under. We're not under budget in terms of our enrollment projection, so I think it's looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and move on to our general fund. And again, as of October 31st, what I'm learning is things change daily. So these numbers aren't exactly where we are today, this date, but through the month of October, you can see our total revenues collected 15.97% of our revenues. We had projected that we'd be at 17.36, so just under what we projected. From local sources, 30.58%. And we had projected we'd be at 30.36, so pretty close to what we projected. Our state sources, we were at 16.58%. We had projected we'd be at 17.05. And our federal resources, we were at 2.77. We projected we'd be at 9.28. And I think really why there's that difference is because a lot of this is some federal grants and federal resources that we haven't yet collected, but will be. So we should see a difference in our next budget status report during next month's board meeting there, where we catch up a little bit to where we projected. Our top 10 sources of revenue.
Janet, if I can for just a minute.
Yes,
OSPI is in the process of transitioning, particularly our federal grants, to a different system. And they changed the application dates and deadlines, and so everything is in a different calendar than what we are used to.
Yes.
So that will change moving forward. We should
That
see
will be what it
somewhat
is
adjust.
going forward, so
Yes.
it will stabilize, and next year we'll know what the new dates are that we should expect.
Thank you.
makes sense.
Yeah. It's called EGMS, and it's a different platform too that we're getting used to as well, that we're managing grants in too. Okay, so our top 10 sources of revenue, it's always apportionment at the top. You can see our apportionment so far through October was $3.8 million. and our property taxes collected, 1.194 million. There's others there that you can see. When you look on the right with the bar graph, you can see a comparison between prior year and current year in local, state, federal, and other revenues. And you can see our state revenues. Well, let me start with local revenues. You can compare with last year. We really didn't have much or at all at this time because we didn't have those levy collections, but now we do. So we're kind of getting back on track there, although the levy amount's a little different than it was before with our previous levy. Our state revenues are above what they were last year and a little bit more than pre-COVID. And our federal, right now, again, as I explained and as Dana said, we still have some federal resources that we haven't collected yet because of this transition and because we haven't done many federal grant claims yet. I did some today that'll make a difference, but there'll be more to come. Let's go on to our expenditures, please, Jackie, on the next page. So last month, I mentioned that we were still doing our year-end financials. Our enrollment wasn't all included because of where we were in the school year, et cetera. So our fund balance last board meeting was at 7.78%. So we're headed in the right direction. It's at 8.65% at the end of October.
Nice.
And that's what we expected that we'd see this change. So things are happening the way we expected, and it's good to see. Our total expenditures year to date are 15.3% of our what we had budgeted, and we had projected though we'd be at 19%. Our salaries and benefits 15.91%, and we had projected we'd be at 15.89%, so we're really close there. And our basic education was at 14.99% at the end of October, and we had projected we'd be at 19%. Our top 10 expenditures, I'll cover a little more of these than I usually do. Our basic ed expenditures are our top one, 2.8 million. District-wide support, 883,000. I'm just kind of rounding. Special ed, 631,000. Voc ed, 308,000. ESSER, 270,000. Transportation, 268. And food services, 262. This is just through October, so two months of our fiscal year. Our expenditures compared to prior year, you can see on the right with the bar graphs, where there's the salaries. You can see the first set of bars there on the left. Comparing to previous years, you can see they're greater, and that's expected. State had provided an increase for teachers and staff. So you can see compared to our COVID years where things kind of dip, but we're kind of resetting and getting past that in a lot of ways, not just fiscally, but definitely has an impact fiscally. Let's go ahead and go on to our month-end balances projections. The solid line is our current year and projection. So you can see October there at the bottom and go straight up, and you can see the October 31 fund balance was at 3.883 million. And if you follow that line all the way to the far right, there's a little triangle there over the dashed line, the dotted line. So that's our budgeted year end, and you can see that we're projected to come in over that. Is just kind of where we stand right now based on current happenings within our budget. So that, we can expect to see movement and, up and down. As I explained last time with the enrollment, the way they parse that out, different percentages each month, that really does have an effect on our fund balance as we go through the year. And that's why you see this trend, just kind of wavy trend like this. And then let's look at the general fund summary. And this one I like to use to compare where we are now compared to last year in terms of our revenues and expenditures and our fund balance. So on the right side, the right box at the top is our revenues current year to date, 6,401,538, 15.9%. These are percentages we saw in the previous pages for revenues, but it's just a different way to break it down. You can see last year, year to date, we had collected 14.10%. So a little different than last year, but not significant. You can see the expenditures there below. We've spent 15.43% of our budgeted expenditures, pretty close to last year, where at this time of year we had spent 15.61%. The very bottom on those tables there, you can see the, above the bar graphs, the ending fund balance at 3.883391. And compare that to last year, at this time was at 3.841227. And the bottom bar graphs there, just kind of show some comparisons between last year and this year. The revenues on the left and the expenditures on the right. You can see, I think of note, the revenues on the bottom left, the local tax, you see that big difference there, and that's, again, because we're now collecting that levy. You can see some differences in state and federal revenues, and also with our expenditures. You can see our salaries for certificated this year compared to last. It looks like, if I were to gauge, about 2.7 or so $1 million in certificated salaries to date, for example, compared to last year where it was under 2.5.
And so, Dan, so we are projected to, or we've budgeted, I should say, in our annual budget to have that deficit of 859,207 for this fiscal year. Am I reading that right?
That is what, you are reading this right, yes. However, I have that same question too, Arla. And this dashboard is created in Forecast 5.
Right.
And in Forecast 5, it's a tool that you can use to be strategic with your budget. And I have that question, and I really want to look closer at that. Since I didn't build the budget, it was my predecessor.
Right.
So I'm going to a workshop on December 6th with Forecast 5. And that is what I want to leave that workshop with. I want to have a better understanding of that. So I apologize for not being able to give you a straight answer on that one right now, but I don't want to tell you something that isn't correct. So I want to learn more about that too. And this Forecast 5 tool, I like it, but I'm not using it to its fullest capability.
Sure. Yeah. I don't envy that, learning new systems. Thank you.
So that's the end of the monthly budget status report for the month of October. Are there any other questions?
No, very complete, good job.
Yes.
Thank you.
Are we going to take a look at the year end now?
Yes, when we're ready to transition to that.
Cool. Oh, yeah.
So, as Dana mentioned, we had a deadline. All the school districts in Washington State have the deadline of November 15th to complete their F-196 year-end financial report. We were able to get it submitted. Well, it's a process, and we had submitted to the ESD previously and got some feedback and had some things to adjust. We completed all those adjustments this afternoon.
What type of feedback?
Feedback, well, the system that this is entered in has a automated edit report. So that's the first thing. You run an edit report and it'll tell you your expenditures aren't matching this other report. They should match. So make sure you go back and take a look at that. And that might just mean something was given the wrong account code. Something as little as like $55.61, for example. So those kinds of things. So where we'll have to go look and see when that expenditure occurred, was it coded correctly? And if it went into the wrong object code or the wrong, something was not correct, one digit off, those kind of things. Other kinds of feedback are just to make sure that we have, well, how can I explain it? If there's something that is on like the schedule of long-term liabilities, that where your beginning balance doesn't match last year's end balance, and they should. They notice that, they find that, and they say, hey, check that, those balances should match. So that could involve us going to take a look at, like, for example, our bond payment schedule, and to make sure that we're on track with our bond payment schedule, things like that. So a lot of their feedback requires us to go back and do research and investigate, why are these numbers not matching? And then in some cases it requires journal entries or doing some manual entries within the F-196 to correct it.
Okay.
So and I just want to give a shout out to the ESD because they've been very supportive. Olympic ESD 114, Heather Corton there, who's been our support person. And also the business office team. It's been a team effort. And I could not have done this without the help of everyone in the business office, all of our staff. So I want to go over really kind of, this is a 40,000 foot level really of our financial statement. I want to share with you the general fund overview and a little of the more details on the general fund and where we stood at the end of the year on our other fund balances. So again, keep in mind, this is the 21-22 school year year end, which ended at the end of August 31st, 2022. At the beginning of fiscal year 21-22, our beginning fund balance was $4,421,089. And you can see there our revenues were $36,369,916. Our expenditures were $36,437,769. And we did transfer out $401,782 into the debt service fund. And so that gives us that end fund balance of $3,951,454.80. And then here I'm showing you a comparison over the last 3 years. Our revenue sources, just kind of in big buckets. You can see the difference between in 2019-20 to 2021-22 in our local revenues. A lot of that has to do with the changes in our levy collections and our levy amount that we're collecting. Our state, that's our apportionment. And there was a change last year. Our enrollment had decreased some from the prior year. That's a cause of that, a part of it. Our federal, we had ESSER dollars to help with the COVID-19 pandemic to help support students through that. So that's where you see those increases in the federal, and that would be the cause of those increases. Our total revenues in 21-22 were $36,369,916. And let's go ahead and look at expenditures now. I broke this down a little bit different. I'm sorry if that graph is that pie graph is a little too small, but at least you can see the big pie pieces. That biggest one on the right is basic education, $15.48 million was spent in basic ed. ALE, $1 million. I'm even having a hard time. I'm going to get a little closer.
What's ALE?
Alternative learning experience or education?
Education. Or experiences.
Alternative learning programs. Voc Ed, vocational ed, $1.274 million in expenditures. You can see the percentages also of how much our budget is.
Yeah.
in these areas. Our middle school CTE, 720,000. District-wide support, 5,113,000. Other instructional programs, 9.38 million. Food services, 1.37 million, and transportation, 2,081,000. So roughly, with our total expenditures, you can see there at the bottom, $36,437,770. The next slide breaks it down by object, and you can see the total's the same, at $36,437,770. I'll make this larger next time. This one by object, I wanted you to see how much is going towards our certificated and classified salaries, our benefits for both. Certificated salaries, 15 million, you can see that, kind of proportionally. How much?
What does capital outlay mean? What does outlay mean in this context?
Capital outlay, those are, we didn't have capital projects, but used some of our capital resources for some big maintenance projects
Okay.
that we had to complete last year.
Dan, you singled out the middle school CTE, but the high school CTE is part of.
No, the report didn't specify, and I have that same question. I'm just going right off the financial statement. I wonder, it could be embedded in the ALE.
Yeah, in the previous slide.
I'm sorry, I don't know if it is.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it is. But I'm just following what's on the statement.
Okay.
It included middle school,
Yeah,
and it
okay.
didn't
Well,
break out the high school.
Okay. Well,
I could get that number to you.
No, I was just curious why.
Why they choose the activities it chooses. I was curious about that.
Yeah, it wasn't broken out in there.
Okay.
This is, so moving on to the different other funds, we have the capital projects fund. We didn't, have a capital project levy, so we didn't collect revenues really, other than interest income. That's what that is. Every month I communicate with the county treasurer about how much money we want to invest of our resources so that we're continuously using our resources to collect some interest and gain a little revenue that way.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, money's moved in and out of those investments based upon our needs. So we did have those expenditures in capital projects, $44,658, leaving a fund balance of $401,504.34. And then the next one is our debt service fund. Sources of revenue include property taxes, timber taxes, general fund transfers, and we did transfer in $401,782 last year, and I noted that in our revenues. Expenditures, paying our non-voted debt. As I mentioned, we have a balance due at the end of November of $2.5 million. So our fund balance has changed since the end of August. So I showed you that previously, but you can see last year we started with $1,577,503, and we ended with $1,806,161. Let's move on to the transportation vehicle fund. Our sources of revenue are the state depreciation and insurance payments. Sometimes we will have an insurance payment if there was a bus accident, for example. And really, we're using that fund to replace buses.
Mm-hmm.
We began the year with $333,538, and we ended the year with $504,812. And I need to meet with our transportation director, and I'll talk with our superintendent too, because I did hear her say that we have some buses that we've purchased or we're awaiting those, so.
Okay.
So that will bring a change there. Student body, ASB. That's our clubs, athletics, fundraisers, ticket sales. The ticket sales, by the way, the electronic ticket sales are going very well.
Good.
They are.
They seem to be.
Success.
Mm-hmm.
More people using them than you thought, or more people using them ever with?
I don't have a way of comparing. Maybe you might know more.
We didn't do electronic ticket sales before.
Right,
So
right.
we have a lot that are happening. We have we still have a number of people who like to pay cash, but it's a very small percentage.
I'm just wondering if it's led to more people coming and paying.
I'll be meeting with
I'm curious, yeah.
Mr. Barnell later this week, and I'll ask him, where we are with that. I get emails from the ticket sale, GoFan, every day saying, this much was sold in tickets today, this much. Sometimes it's $100, sometimes it's a couple thousand. There's a football game or something, homecoming. So I'm just noticing, wow, there's a lot of transactions taking place.
That's great.
It's making things easier. So those are sources, some of the types of revenues. Expenditures include, athletics, recreational, social, cultural events, etc. for our students. Our beginning fund balance at the beginning of 21-22 was $383,626, and our ending fund balance was $418,808. And then going on to our, are we done? We got to the last one. Does anyone have any questions?
No. Very complete
No, it's
report.
good.
Thank you.
You have to do that every year, turn that in.
Yes, I do. And there's another report called the CFA, the Schedule of Federal Expenditures. And I need to have that completed by the end of November. So I'm reporting federal expenditures. So there's another big yearly report that I'm required to do. So that's next.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Looks good. Thank you.
So we are at, thank you, Audrey. We are at the teaching and learning update.
Yeah, we are not going to have an additional update because we had an hour-long study session about the building improvement plans, and I just want to state that you heard some very exciting things. Our teachers and our principals are very data-driven to improve opportunities and processes for kids, and we hope to see some results.
That is great to hear. Okay, that's all update that you had? Okay. Well, our upcoming board letter columnists, I am up for November, so I need to make a note to talk to Dana and Amanda maybe. We've got Eric in December, John in January, Leanna in February, and Laura in March. I'm wondering if we can, I was going to talk to you about this, but maybe like have some sort of template for these where the board members just sort of plug and play. Might encourage everybody to do it.
Yes, we can do that. Amanda and I will work on that.
Yeah. Legislative representative report, that's me. I don't have anything to report from the last month, but 3 of us will be headed to Spokane this weekend for the Washington State School Directors Annual Conference, and that should be pretty interesting. And we will miss John and Leanna.
Yes, we will.
Well, we are at our performance and policy review. This month we took a look at ER 10, which is academic standards and practices. And I believe we've all had a chance to take a look at that, and we are here to see whether we find the superintendent's performance to comply with ER 10. Do we have a vote, any motion before we
I move that
discuss?
we find the superintendent's performance to comply with ER 10.
Great. Any discussion?
I would just like to say that this is a totally complete and impressive
Yes.
monitoring report. As I read through it, I just kind of got more and more excited about all the things that are going on in our district right now. And I landed on this one sentence that just sort of said it all. The key to effective differentiation is not the material, but rather how the teacher uses the material. And then you went on to say that there's professional learning communities that support that work, and professional development, and so many other things to help the teacher in the classroom differentiate between this student and what they need. So I was totally impressed. The best report I've ever read.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
It went well, I thought, with our presentation today.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, I got somewhat excited just by reading the report.
Mhm.
And then I came to this thing and was really impressed. There was a nice fit between what the superintendent has written us for a report and what we were hearing independently from the various teachers.
That is great. I can't wait to watch the video on that.
I call for the question.
Yeah, I had a couple things that I'm just trying to find the place because it was such a lengthy report, and they weren't like super picky questions or anything. But I cannot find the spot where I initially had it. So, one of them was under this on page 4, develop assessments that will adequately measure each student's progress toward achieving content standards. When you say at the end there, we continue to focus on and improve this work, it just kind of piqued my interest as to what that might look like or what you had noticed needed tweaking.
A lot of that comes from our work with the tools that we're using to do progress monitoring that the principals told you about today. So those are nationally normed and look at particularly math and reading and social emotional learning standards and expectations and where kids are, and they give all the teachers at all the grade levels really good information to target what they need to target. And then some of the other, not math, not reading. So then we look at state standards, and we have some state expectations of ways that we assess, like in the social studies, there's an end of the year project that needs to happen. And so there are a lot of different tools that we use, but what our team is getting much, much more proficient at is actually looking at the data they have and looking for what the students need and prescribing activities to be able to address those needs.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Like, it's one thing to collect the data, but then, and I know this just through work, but to sit and look at it is a whole other thing, and work on it. I found the other place, where you say with standards-based report cards at the elementary and middle level, we have positively changed the conversation between teachers and parents, between teachers and students, and among teachers. When you say change the conversation, what does that, what was the conversation before?
It's different than, I have a 70%, I have a 80%, I have a 30% in a class. These are the things that I know and am able to do. These are the things I need to work on. So that when a teacher is working with a student or a student and a parent, they can be much more deliberate about what the pieces are that student needs to be successful.
Okay.
Yes, and definitely I see that from being in those conferences.
As a parent.
As a parent.
That's cool. Okay, any other discussion or questions for the superintendent?
No, I just thought that what you said a second ago, Janet, about the teachers using the feedback, the research, is exactly what I heard from the presentations today.
Excellent.
So I mean, this consilience of inductions, whole different sources of information coming together. So I was just a very nice fit, again, between the report right down to the detail, using the data to do that.
Great. Well, I will call for the vote. All those who find the superintendent's performance to comply with ER 10, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes. So at this point in time, we are able to review the policies that we had discussed last month and had found in compliance. This is an opportunity for any of us to consider any needed changes to recent policies. This is for ER6 facilities. Do we have any discussion?
I have nothing.
Neither do I. Okay, makes it easy. We are now at the adjournment portion of our meeting. Do we have anything for the good of the order from the board or superintendent? I'll start with you, Jana.
Well, I had the opportunity this past week and weekend to attend Leadership Institute at the Milliken Leadership Training Center. And it was heavily focused on building leadership to build community and also branding your organization and how to do that in a way that builds those partnerships throughout the community. So there was some amazing information that we're going to work on as a team and use to improve the things that we do to communicate and engage our community and our schools.
Cool. That's great. Laura?
Well, other than the student forum today, which I thought was well attended.
It was very well attended.
How many did you guys have?
There was about 20.
Yeah.
It was a good crowd.
Almost
job.
everyone that was invited showed up.
Good job. That's awesome.
The only suggestion I would have, Morgan, is that maybe they get a heads up about what we're looking for from them, because I know it's really hard when you're a freshman, you don't want to speak up.
Yeah.
But
So Morgan and I should work on that
yeah,
ahead of time.
yeah.
Yeah, we will. We try to give the kids a heads up. I try to, but it's hard
It
trying
is.
to communicate with all of them a couple days
Sure.
before. But what we're going to do next time is me as superintendent will talk. We'll hammer out some questions, at least a few to get us started. That way the kids can be, and try to get out to the kids so that way they're thinking about it. Then we're going to try to get a better cross-section grade-wise of
Yeah.
the students, because this time it ended up being pretty heavily freshmen.
I see. And were they, kind of
They were afraid to talk.
flustered? Okay.
They were pretty
A lot
timid,
of them
yeah.
showed up, but not a lot of talking.
But now they have an idea of what it is, so that's
Mhm.
fine, if they want to come in. Yeah, no, it was good. I'm glad you guys are doing that.
That's cool.
Eric?
So a couple things. I forgot last time to bring it up, but I'm proud of our middle school softball coach for having a undefeated season.
Nice.
Oh, that's
For the
cool.
girls making it all the way through there. I think that group is going to be amazing to watch all of those girls continue to grow as they get into high school. And that is it's amazing to watch.
It's fun.
The other thing is saying, I was there with Laura today. I thought that was really nice. I thought there was a lot of good information on the snow day information. I think is the more and more we communicate that out, I think the more and more the parents will start understanding what's going on, especially with the predictions of what the weather's going to look like this year. So I thought that was very good. So that's all.
That's all? The only thing I can think of that I attended this past month was the fall festival at Belfair Elementary that the PTA put on. And that was we came a little bit later, and it just was, I've never been before. It was party time. It was really whoa, lots of kids, well attended, really well decorated, and just a really fun party vibe. It was
Yeah.
for kids though. I was like, this is wild, and I think because it had been some time past that the kids had been eating a lot of sugar already, and so the games were kind of half attended because everybody was just having a good time. So it was really fun. But that's all I have. John?
Well, I'm sorry not to make the roundtable today. This was because of our switch of schedules because of the conference. I had back-to-back meetings today, and if I didn't this one, I would have spent half the day in meetings.
Sure.
So I had the Mason Transit Authority meeting at 4, and we managed to get out of that just in time to drive here.
Sure.
So this is sort of indirectly connected with the schools. MTA opened the new Park and Ride.
Oh, they did.
And that's a $10 million project, and we've been working on it for virtually as many years as I've been on that board, and I've been on since about 2008. So it should help our parents get to work more safely, get more cars off the highway. And it's being very well used. If you check in during the day, you can see the lot is just about full of cars. So from the get-go, that's been open, and it's been a tremendous project that brought together a number of different agencies working together. And I give credit to my colleague who also is North Mason, Randy Netherland. He and I worked closely together to bring this to fruition. I give most of the credit to Randy, but anyway, it grew out of a lot of cooperation between agencies that don't normally talk to one another. And so it was a good feeling to have that, and I think it'll be a big asset to the community.
I think a lot of local businesses are probably happy too that there's a place for people to park and not leave their cars.
Yeah, and it also has a place for our staff, the MTA staff, to unwind, and under certain conditions, it could even be a public meeting space. The problem is locking up the building. But if that could be addressed, and of course technology, look at our kids, what they're building. Someday they'll be able to press a button in Shelton and lock the thing up.
Sure,
So
that's
anyway,
possible.
I think it was a good day for North Mason.
Thank you. Morgan, do you have anything?
I just had two things. So we did the roundtable meeting at the high school. I'm currently working with the leadership teacher down at the middle school to try to do one at the middle school. Because used to pre-COVID, we would either do one down at the middle school or they were invited up to the high school. But it's hard right now because each grade level has a different bell schedule down at the middle school. So it's really hard to coordinate these things. So it may just start off just being the 8th graders. We'll try to get all grades in, or at least represented some way. But I'm going to go down there Friday or Monday of next week and go over expectations with them and how it's going to be run. And then hopefully we can get a meeting in for December, sometime before Christmas break.
Cool.
So then the other thing is have fun at the annual conference. I'm sad I'm not able to make it, but let me know how it goes. I'm definitely interested. And then I'm also looking forward to the legislative conferences coming up in January. I know there are 2 students in particular that have come to me that are interested in legislative opportunities. So I'm going to see what I can do with some of my connections at WASDA and some of our state senators and representatives, and maybe see if they can do a little bit there too.
Here.
They can organize that through my office.
Okay.
That's how that needs to be organized.
Sounds good. I will.
Okay? And we'll get them there.
Okay.
That's pretty cool. So the high schoolers are all on the same bell schedule, but the middle schoolers are not.
Yes.
Interesting.
That's part of their win time schedule.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, Director Campbell, will you lead us in the board self-assessment of the meeting?
Yes. Well, this was a very fine meeting. The agenda is well planned, focus on the real work of the board, follow the agenda. I'm just going down the list. If you guys weren't prepared for the meeting, you sure did this evening. You look prepared. A meeting proceeded without interruptions or distractions. You can't say our deliberations weren't public. I think everybody had a chance to participate and did. Nobody seemed to be looking off in space. Everybody seemed to be attentive. Trust and openness, sure. And treated each other with respect and courtesy. I don't think we had time to be rude. So I give us a satisfactory on that. And governance principles, all these really don't apply much to our meeting here, but except a few of them. A board chair helps the board efficiently conduct its meeting, that was for sure. And we have an annual calendar. And we didn't talk about past performance, but we sure did talk about future possibilities. We, of course, make our actions at the policy level rather than the operation level, and we support the superintendent in a reasonable interpretation of its policies. So, most of that's non-actable, and the rest of it is yes. So, satisfactory.
Thank you. So our next board meeting is a special meeting not next week, but the week after on November 29th. That's a Tuesday at 6:30. And then our next regular school board meeting will be December 15th at 6:30. Both of those will be right here in the boardroom. So I am going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting right at 7:30.
Wow.
Nice.
Wow.
Didn't you say so?
Good.